All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to implement move speed, but naturally before I implement move speed, I found an edge case issue that I could only find one way to really resolve, and I don't know how else to really say it, but it has to do with the fact of this ability class being asynchronously loaded or not. The issue stems down to this equipment entry when this is broadcast through this delegate, and it comes back to flip through all the entries to make sure the ability level has been adequately adjusted. If you're asynchronously loading, then this works exactly as designed. However, if you're synchronously loading because it's valid and you do this here, then what ends up happening is it adds this stat effect where it adds the extra stat effect here. It adds it twice, right? Because it would add it here the moment that it's broadcast, but then now that the equipment ability has been given, then what it does is it turns around and it adds equipment stats again in the same frame because it's already valid. If it were asynchronously loaded, then it would still add equipment stats. However, because the ability hasn't been granted, it's still asynchronously loading, then it just goes nowhere. So then when it comes back to this ability level later and it syncs through all of them, it will do that. So the easiest way that I found to resolve this is just to simply make this a two params delegate where I can broadcast a Boolean that will call be async. And if I do that, then all I have to do is say false here and then say true here to indicate that we're async. I can come back into the manager components. We're now sending be async through here, which means I can come back into this, and on the ability, on the declaration for the function, we can add bool be async. And then we can bool be async. And then we can pass this through, be async. Because really, there's only one situation where it ever matters. There's only one time that it ever matters, and it's right here. As soon as you get into this entry iterator, we need to check just the one time. Say if not, be async. We check that if it's not async first, because if it is async, then it doesn't matter. We just let it fly. But then we ask for the current entry, the entry tag, and we need to match this tag exact. And that's going to be the equipment entry. Has the entry tag as well. And then we could just say continue on this. Let's continue on this one too. So if it's not asynchronously loaded and we're cycling through here and we're at the current entry and that is the one that we're here now, we just skip over that one. So then it moves on and we're done. And then we can come back and it will go through and add the equipment stats, which will adjust the level appropriately if it's not asynchronously loaded. And then if it is asynchronously loaded, like I said, this equipment stats will blow by, but it'll do nothing because the ability is not granted yet. And then it will grant the ability, and then it will shoot back down here, and this will be, async will be true, so then it won't even check for this, and then it'll grab all of them and add it. So that is all sorted. And then now that we've got that sorted, now let's go get some move speed going. So the first thing we need to do is come into the attributes, and we're going to come into here, and right underneath max mana, we're going to say f gameplay attribute data movement speed blueprints. This is all boilerplate. This is all just copy pasta, right? Movement speed. None of this should be wildly new to anybody, what I'm doing here. Movement speed. Now it's up to you if you want to cap movement speed. I don't cap movement speed. I just make sure I don't do stupid things with movement speed and everything's fine, right? But if you want to cap it, you can cap it. You do the same thing with like mana and max shield, max health. You do the same thing with movement speed, but I don't. So I've been fine. So just void on rep movement speed const f gameplay attribute data old movement speed function gameplay attribute rep notify urpg attribute set movement speed, all movement speed, and then we need to replicate it. Do rep lifetime condition notify urp movement speed rep notify always. Okay, so that's added there. And then how we're going to use it is, it should be very simple. I don't think movement speeds should be any crazy implementation, truthfully. We just come into, let's see, we're in the private section. We can come to the character, into the RPG systems character, and then in bind callback to dependencies. We just need the bind callbacks and the broadcast initial values, truthfully. So we're going to come here and we're going to add another callback. We're going to RPG ability system comp. We're going to get a gameplay attribute value change delegate for the RPG attributes. We now have the move speed attribute. Get movement speed attribute. There we go. That we can add the lambda, that we can capture this still, which gives us a const f on attribute change data, reference call data. Whoa. Typoed on that. Do that. Here we go. And then since we're here, the only thing that really matters about move speed is changing your character's maximum walk speed. So if we just get character movement, we can just look straight at the max walk speed variable and set it equal to the data.newValue. That's all we really need to do. And then on the broadcast initial values, what we could do is we could just get character movement, and then again look at the max walk speed and set that equal to RPG attributes. We could say get movement speed. We could just set it just like that. And then now we're ready to start modifying it. So let's load up. Okay, now that we're back in the editor, let's open this up and let's go here. Where are we? So we're going to start here. First thing we're going to do is come into the ability system, into the attributes, and then the default starting attributes. We have all these. We need to add a new default starting attribute to them now. We need to add a movement speed, which we're going to override. And we can start off by saying like 500. So we'll say 500 is the base movement speed. So now he'll have movement speed to start. And then if I come into the data, into the stat effects, we're coming to stat effects, and we'll start in the low tier. Let's see, we want to make a new stat effect, and in order to do that, we need a gameplay tag that'll be stat effects dot attribute dot low tier dot movement speed. Excuse me. Which means I need a tag name that also reflects that. But since we're going to do this on all the tiers, we might as well do it for all the tiers. So we'll do high tier dot movement speed. Right, all of our leaf tags are all going to have the same names. So we could do this movement speed up, and mid tier movement speed up. So I'll add that for all of them. And then, so now this is low tier, so stat effect attributes, low tier movement speed up. And we could just say movement, we could just do plus movement speed, plus movement speed. I need an effect class, so we don't have an effect class. So let's go look where our effect classes are. And then we're going to make a blueprint class and make a gameplay effects class. And this will be GE equipment of movement speed. And first thing is this needs to be an infinite, right, with no period, and we're gonna have a modifier. But in this modifier, what we want to do is we're gonna modify the movement speed, sure. But in 5.6, we now have some new ones which are pretty cool. So we used to only have add, multiply, divide, and then override, right? And they added multiply additive, multiply compound, divide additive, add final, and add base. They added these and broke it down a little bit more. But the biggest one you really want to care about is the multiply additive versus the multiply compound is the biggest deal when you're handling multipliers. Because like the multiply additive is what we're going to be using here today for move speed, because what it is a 50% plus 50% equals 100%. So 1.5, if I have a 50% move speed bonus on one piece of equipment and a 50% move speed bonus on a second piece of equipment, then my multipliers will equal a 100% bonus if I do multiply additive. If I do multiply compound and I have two pieces of equipment, one has 50% and the second has 50%, then the multipliers multiply the previous values. So now it is 125% instead of 100% bonus. So I would like to not get crazy. So I'd like to do multiply additive on this to make sure. And then in the modifier magnitude, I want to do a curve table. But my thing is this movement speed. If you look at any popular game, movement speed is only rolled, is not rolled between 10 and 35 in one increments, right? It's rolled in set values. 10%, 15%, 20, 25, 30, 35%. That's how I want. So I need to be able to roll a float from 1 to 6, but be able to represent it as 10 to 35% exactly, scaling by 5s. How do I do that in a scalable float? Is we can use curve tables. So what we're going to do is come into the ability system data where the curve tables are. We'll come here and we'll make we'll go to miscellaneous and we'll make a curve table, and this will be a constant curve table. We'll create it and we'll say CT constants. This will be our constants, and we'll take this curve and we'll rename it stat effects dot attribute dot movement speed. And how a constant curve works is whatever this value is, you click this to add a row, right? And then so whatever value this is will redeem this value. So we're going to start at level 1 roll is going to be a 10% multiplier, and in order to do that, we multiply by 1.1, right? So 1.1 will give us a 10% multiplier. And then, so now we do this, and so if our float now rolls, we're going to roll a float from 1 to 6. So if it rolls 1, it'll be here, but only if it crosses to 2 will it drop to here, and we can say 1.15, which will be 15%. So if the float rolls 1.8, then it'll get truncated off to 1, and it'll be 10% bonus. It has to get all the way past 2 to get there. So I'm going to do 3, and we're going to do 1.2, and we'll do this 1.25. Oops, excuse me. 1.25 for 4. 5, we're going to do 1.3, and 6, we're going to do 1.35. So now we have 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35% based off of 1 through 6. So now we can use constants. And so now if we come here and use constants, we can do move speed, and it'll show you here just like this preview at that 1.1, and it shows exactly that we have those. Now truthfully, all you have to do is come back here because this is already how it works. So we can say here we want this to be movement speed, and we want it to be, I want to roll between 1 and 2.5 to give them a chance to roll max to your right. And it's not a fractional stat. I only want 1 or 2, and we'll do probably select it as 1. Now I want to show you what we're going to immediately run into, however, which is what we need to further resolve. Is this is all we really need to do to make the numbers work, but it's a lot of work to be able to display it. Equipment definitions. I'm going to come into the bronze sword. We'll take the bronze sword, and we will I'll do this right here. I'm going to set it to 1, 1, and I'm going to clear all of these, and I just want the low tier movement speed up, and I want 1 stat roll on it guaranteed. And we're going to do that, and we have this all filled in, right? This should all be filled in. That's fine. So I'm going to hit play, and we're going to look at this client, and I'm going to do this, and bronze sword. Well, it says movement speed +1, right? That's an issue because it's supposed to be 10%, not +1. But unfortunately, the float is +1, right? Now, if I hold Alt and I press tilde, I'm looking at enemy primary. So I need to hold Shift. It says hold Shift and press apostrophe to select a local player. So that's what I'm going to do because I want to see that the third person, character 2, is me, right? I want to press number 3 on my keypad to be able to show abilities. They took away the debug that I can find for gas, so this is the new debug we're going to have to use. But if I look at this, my movement speed value is 500, right? And if my bronze sword, I've got movement speed +1. So if I equip this, it now goes to 550 because we multiplied by 10%, right? So you can't really tell, but you could see the math is working. However, just to display this is going to be different, right? So in order to be able to display how this is 10%, then what we're going to want to do is come back into code, and in the public in the, let's come down to equipment types. In here, we're going to want a Boolean here that says bool b is multiplier, and we'll set that equal to false. Edit defaults, blueprint read only. And I'm so sorry, we're in the equipment stat effect groups, right? So we're the multiplier. And then under the current value, what I'll do is I'll make an f scalable float here. We'll add an include, and this will be called non-linear curve. And we'll set that equal to f scalable float. And we'll do blueprint read only. Oh, excuse me. We need blueprint read only, but we also need edit defaults only. We need to do this. And then the unfortunate thing about scalable floats is that in the world of blueprints, there's a very handy function in C++ that's not exposed to blueprints. So what we're going to do is come into our libraries, and in our ability system library, we're going to write another quick utility static function. We're going to say static, and this will be a float return, and it's going to say get scalable float value at level, and it's going to take a const f scalable float reference called curve, and then it's going to take a float called in level, and we can make this a u function and label it blueprint pure, because it's going to be super easy. Oops, I don't want an inline definition. I want an actual definition. Show context action, generate definitions. Yes, all we have to do is return the curve has get value at level that we get with the in level. That get value at level is just not exposed to blueprints, but this is all we really need to do is call this function right here to make this work how I want it to work. So we're going to just expose that as a static function to blueprints real quick. And then now we have this nonlinear curve and this b is multiplier. Now we're going to, well, make sure everything's saved, right? Save all. And then we are going to reload. Okay, now that we're back in the editor, let's see what we got, what's open here. I don't need that anymore. I could do this. Oh, we're going to go over this. I don't need this. And I don't, oh, yes, I do need this now. So we're going to see that in the inventory and the widgets and equipment entry tooltip, the issue is right here. Is this set attribute value text right now. The only thing is the current value is hooked up to show what it is and based off of a fractional stat. So now we're going to need to beef this up. We need to seriously change this. So we want to know if it's still a fractional stat. But, oh, excuse me, we need to set attribute value text. We need to add another Boolean for the b is multiplier. We just need to add that to start with, and then when we come back here we can hook this up. But when it comes to the float, what I want to do is select float. I want to select the float, and the float I want to select is based upon if this non-linear curve right here, we're going to break this, and inside here it's got curve, and we're going to break this. And inside here it's got the curve table, and we can drag off this and say is valid. And if you do the function is valid, that's just a quick pure function that returns a Boolean if it's valid or not, and we'll use that to select. So if this curve table is valid, we're going to pick A. If this curve table is not valid, it picks B, at which point we could just plug in the current value, right? Because that means it's not going to be a nonlinear, just be a linear. So that's what it is. So if it is, however, then we can just say get scalable float value at level that we just made right here. This is pure function now. And we can take this nonlinear curve right here, and we can take the current value as the in level, and we can use that float for A. So we could do that. And so what that means is all the rest of the things that are just linear values aren't going to be impacted by this at all. Just in the case that it does have this curve table, we're going to want to change it. And because we do that, then back in the equipment definition here, we have the is multiplier. We're going to check, movement speed is multiplier. We're going to check that true. And then we have to take the nonlinear curve. We have to label it that it's that constant, this one, like we did in the, we have to feed it the same thing like we did in the gameplay effect, right? So now if we do that, well, first we're going to see at least it's going to change it to where it evaluates the curve. So at least it'll change the number. So, oops, we'll get this up here, get a bronze sword. So now we're at least at 1.1. We're now getting the evaluated level, right? So it's not saying just +1. Now we're getting the evaluated level. And I wonder if I get another bronze sword. Oh, that's also 1.1. So we have the evaluated level. So we're gonna come back into the effect row, or it's in the set attribute value text. And what we're gonna do is take all of this right here, and we're gonna collapse this to a function that we're gonna call format additive text. Format additive text, that will make it a pure function. Now we could drop this right here, and we can drop this one. Value could be float, is fine, and then this one boolean should be fractional stat. We can go like this, format additive text, and we'll set this like here. We'll just move this out of the way real quick, and then okay, we're gonna take all of this right here. Oh, first off, we're gonna come in here and make sure that the value is greater than 0 is what selects this text. Make sure everything's fine. Result plus minus. Okay, that's good. Select all that stuff there. That's fine. And then what we're gonna want to do is come back out here, and we can make another function that says format multiplier text, and this is going to take a float called value, and the outputs is going to be a text that we'll call result. We'll do this, and we will format this text, and this will be plus, minus, and then space, and then value, and then percentage sign, right? Because this is multiplier, so based off percentage. So we're gonna have this. And then, so the first thing we do is check the value is greater than 0. Select text. Pick A, plus, minus. So if it's greater than 0, plus, minus, and then the value, excuse me. And then for the value, remember this is coming in as a percentage multiplier, right? So the first thing we need to do is subtract 1 from it. And then we need to take this and then multiply this by 100. And then take this result and truncate this. And then this will be our value. So we can do this. And then we can set attribute value, and then we can say format multiplier text. Oh, that can be also pure function, format multiplier text value. And then we could just do based off of if this is a multiplier. Oh, excuse me. We can select text based off of get as multiplier. If it is a multiplier, then we format this. If not, then we format this. And we can go like this. And then now, based off if it's a multiplier or not, it should set that to that. So now if I roll bronze sword, I should be seeing 10 or 15%. Oops, let me erase this. Bronze sword. So there we go. Now I've got move speed plus 10%. And now, haha, this is the next thing. I love this. 14%, right? Didn't we say 1.15? But this is displaying 14%. Oh no, why oh why? Welcome to the world of float imprecision. Is 1.15 is what you typed in that curve table, but what really comes out in the game is actually 1.14999999998, right? So how do you help yourselves in these scenarios when you have to deal with things like this? Is in your constant tables, you do a third decimal point of precision as a 1. So you say 1.101, right? because that way when the float level of imprecision, or this 1.15, so I'm going to do 1.151, because that way when the level of imprecision hits, it doesn't hit the it doesn't go from 1.5 to 1.49888, 9998. This now goes to 1.150999998. The third decimal point of precision is what's going to get hit with the bad value, 1.301 and then 1.351. So now if we do this and then I come back, I should be able to bronze sword. Now my movement speed is at 15% where it should be. And we can see if we shift and do this, third person character C2, movement speed is 500. And then now it's 575, again 0.5, because that that third point of precision, that one, you're going to give a 0.5, but that's so insignificant. You care that it's at 575, however. But that's move speed. So now all we have to do is you come into here on the low tier. Well, let's see, where's our stat effects? Well, the mid tier, right? We can add one. We can add stat effects dot attribute dot mid tier dot movement speed up. And we could do attribute mid tier plus movement speed. This is multiplier. Now, what I want is, remember the constant curve 1 and 2 is that. So if I want level 3 and 4, so I need to go 3 to 4.5. And then it's a multiplier, not a fractional stat, using the constant of the movement speed. So now it's going to be at 3 and 4.5. So now at 3, it'll be 20% and 25%. So mid is going to be 20, 25%. And then the high tier, we can add, we can say stat effect dot attribute dot high tier dot movement speed up. And that's going to be the high tier movement speed up plus movement speed, the movement speed, and this will be between 5 and 6.5 multiplier with the constants of movement speed. That'll be 30 to 35. So now if you wanted to come to all of your, we're in the swords. So now I could do the low tier, high tier, and mid tier, and just see that we're gonna get 1. So we'll only roll 1, or we could be really crazy. No, we're not gonna be crazy. Oh man, and I absolutely love this. I love how I do this every time. I never set the equipment mid tier, the probability select. I did 0%, so I'm always getting low tier. All right, so let's check these. See if I get any speedy boy bronze swords. 30% move speed. Bazinga. This one here. And then let's see if I hold shift and I do this. Third person, I'm fast, so my speedy should go to 650. Boom, 650.5. So there we go. Got your move speed. And then this one's also at 30%. But this one's 30%. So that's how we implement move speed, like that.